Bruton.
Yeah, no, thanks very much indeed, last Councillor, for allowing this be taken. First of all, I'd like to congratulate the Minister for the progress that's been made in relation to special education. It's truly transformative. 4 times as many special classes, twice as many SNAs. And we've moved from individual model of assessments and expensive gateways to support to one that's much more of a whole school approach. But the final game changer for me is the proposal developed by the NCSE of what's called the school inclusion model. That brings a range of therapeutic supports to an extended number of schools and preschools. It's been piloted, and to my mind, very successfully. The pilot was adopted because I suppose at the time there was constrained resources and it needed to be road tested, I suppose, to ensure that it was the best approach. But I would argue really strongly that this is far better than the health-based approach that was there, referral to the health system. It's accessible, there's no appointments, no no-shows. It's a team approach integrating the resource teacher or the special needs teacher and the SNA. It encourages learning and growth within the school to how to adopt proper therapeutic approaches to supporting children who need it. And for pupils, it's delivered in a familiar setting and addresses real constraints that teaching and SNA support alone cannot achieve. So I really believe that we need to move swiftly, and I'd like to know about the evaluation. What are the criteria and outcomes of assessment? How long will it take? Will the NCSE be at the heart of that evaluation? What approach will be taken to extending to new areas? Because I think this is really urgently needed and will help address what I think all of us know is a crisis in early intervention access, because people will have access to therapeutic services within the familiar school-based system.
Thank you, Last Ceann Comhairle, and I'm very pleased to be able to discuss this here with you, Minister. Thank you for coming with my colleague Richard Bruton. The difference for me about the provision of supports for children with special education needs in their schools, as opposed to having to finish school and go somewhere else, is just transformative for the child, for the convenience of the child, for how natural it is for them to stay in their own school environment, for the comfort with which they can access additional services. Anything that we can do to make children just more comfortable and less different. And whether that's special education needs support services, whether that's play therapy for any child in school, to the extent that we can support them within the familiar environment of the school of their own school, is better and better. There's so much work, really good work being done in this area, Minister, and I want to thank you for all of your work and all of your engagement. In my own area in Dunleary, we've had now 11 additional special needs classes, special education needs classes in our area, bringing it up to 43. That is a huge increase since the general election, and I really want to thank you for your work on it, but also all the schools in my area who have engaged with the department, who have come up with creative solutions. We have more in train, but the difference that's made to parents, particularly of 3- and 4-year-olds who have really been struggling to know, where will I send my child, how can I get them into a class place. It has really taken an awful lot of pressure off them, and it's made a massive difference, as has the additional numbers in terms of special needs assistance. We now have an additional 2,165 in these 2-year period, and thank you for your work in securing budget for that and delivering that. But I think, as my colleague Deputy Bruton has said, this pilot model that's there is a real opportunity to deliver services in a much more natural, convenient and I believe effective way. We have had a pilot, and I suppose what we'd love to hear is an update on that, how you think it's going, what the prospects are for it being rolled out into other areas for further testing, and indeed nationally, and any possible timeline on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Las Ceann Comhairle. And first of all, I just want to commend the deputies for bringing this topical question today. It's a very pertinent issue to me as Minister for Special Education, and I appreciate all the work, first of all, that the previous Minister for Education, Richard Bruton, who in fact kick-started this process in terms of the school inclusion model, and I want to thank him for that. And I also want to reassure the deputy, both deputies, that this is something that I really feel will be the gold star policy change for special education in Ireland. And I hope that in time other jurisdictions will look to this country and admire the model that we have. So I just want to commend both of you, first of all, for the work that you've done in this regard. Suffice to say, this is, to me, as you both have pointed out correctly, this is going to be the transformative model for children with additional needs. There has been a pilot, as you know, which started in CH07, which was in Kildare, West Wicklow and South West Dublin. And what happened, as we all know, is the pandemic unfortunately got in the way and the schools had to close in early 2020 and early 2021. Then in March 2020, the HSE unfortunately had to take some of our therapists to use them and to utilise them for test and tracing, which was, of course, difficult in terms of trying to retain our own therapists. And in that regard, then, a memo was brought to government by my colleague Norma Foley here in relation to the recruitment of our own therapists by the NCSE. And this is one of the challenges that we face, is to ensure that we have sufficient therapists for both our model in the school inclusion model, and that also the HSE can use their own therapists, because at the end of the day, both models are complementary to each other. Neither is in lieu of each other. But you know, it's really important when we're talking about the school inclusion model that we note the key elements in relation to it. And one of them is the continuing professional development and training for our teachers, which is, and for indeed for our SNAs. And in that regard, we have set out a new SNA training programme in UCD. It was oversubscribed. I think there were about 3,500 SNAs who wanted to avail of it. There is more starting again this year and indeed early next year, and that's going to be of critical importance to these SNAs, which, as you know, Deputy Bruton in particular, from your time as Minister for Education, DEPR have told us that it's not going to be possible to be continuously adding on more SNAs year on, year out. At the moment, we have 19,000 SNAs. That's an increase of 70% since 2011. But the ideal model is this multidisciplinary wraparound approach within the school environment, and that will involve the other key element, which is SLTs and OLTs, to have those in-school supports, which your colleague, Deputy Karen McNeill, has pointed out, will make it more comfortable and convenient for the child within the school environment, and that's something that I think can be commended. There's also the psychological and behavioural supports, and when I've gone to schools who have already rolled out this model, St Martin de Porres is one school that springs to mind out in Tala. They have said to me, and indeed in other schools that I visited, that behavioural practitioners are something that's really, really imperative and badly needed within the schools. And again, that's a key element of this. Also, the front-loading of SNAs. So we have already done that, or started that process with regard to the special education teachers, and we want to do that with the SNAs as well. The NEPS expansion in terms of the well-being of children with additional needs is going to be crucial also, and we intend to expand that as well.
Deputy Bruton. Thanks very much, Minister. And first of all, I'd like to congratulate you on your very accurate appreciation of the benefits of this model. I remember when Eamon Stack, then chair of the NCSE, developed this. He was like a child, so enthusiastic was he about the impact that this would have on special ed. It is an opportunity to drive this and make this, as you said, unique. There's no best practice model. This is the best practice model that can be developed. In my view, it doesn't need assessment, not by anyone other than the NCSE, to see that it's achieving its goals. The key here, Minister, I think, is to make sure that we move as rapidly as possible to deliver this and see no obstacles put in its way.
I absolutely concur with my colleague, Deputy Bruton, and I keep thinking about it from the perspective of the child and the child's need, this child-centred focus. When you're bringing speech therapists, occupational therapists, psychological supports into the school, rather than having to be othered or different by travelling to another place. It's a bit like I keep thinking about children in hospital with ongoing additional health needs who have to turn up again and again to multiple different types of appointments, whether it's neurology, endocrine, complex cases where you're constantly being taken out of the child's routine. The child should wake up, have their breakfast, get to school, come home, have as normal a day. And any child with additional needs, whether they're educational needs, whether they're health needs, as a state, we need to really think about that from the child's perspective and deliver the services in the most natural and convenient way for them that's going to get the best outcomes and be minimally disruptive to them. This is a fantastic model, and as Deputy Bruton has said, the evaluation is clear, and what's really exciting about this is being able to deliver it more broadly as quickly as possible.
The Minister to conclude.
I think the important point to note, which I may not have mentioned already, is the fact that the pilot has recommenced in CHO 7 this term, and we do have plans, obviously, for expansion around that. And suffice to say that that independent evaluation I think is critical, and I am very satisfied so far with the report that we have received in terms of the gaining in confidence that these children with additional needs have gained from availing of the school inclusion model, and also that the fact that they have reached most of their targets in a way that they hadn't prior to that. It is important, as you both say, that children get the right supports that are available at the right time so that they can achieve better educational and life outcomes. And at the end of the day, that is what we all want. This shouldn't be, and special education should never be a partisan issue, in my view. It's something that we all care about. We have demonstrated that in the government in terms of providing over 2 billion now, which is over 25% of the entire education budget dedicated solely to special educational needs. In terms of the school inclusion model and the next steps that are involved, a memo to government will be brought over the next few weeks, we hope, and that will ensure that we continue to roll this out into other CHO areas across the country. As you both have said, and I can hear the enthusiasm from both of you for the school inclusion model. I'm very grateful that you have brought it into the Dáil today, because it shines a spotlight on it and the really, really good work that we are doing. At the end of the day, this provides a framework for teaching and care and training and therapeutic supports that will facilitate the greater inclusion of children with complex needs in education. We have received funding from the government for 6 million in 2021 in terms of recruitment of therapists and indeed OLTs and SLTs also. Come on.
Thank you, Minister. And,